Hello Musicianship 5, I hope you're all well and have had a lovely half term. We're back to business today. Again, something quite different. I say that every time, I don't know why. I know a lot of you watch Two Set Violin, the YouTubers who kind of talk about classical music and memes and do funny sketches and stuff. I watch them too, okay, they're great. I love them, fine, and I like the way they bring classical music to a bigger audience, but I have a lot of disagreements with that. Problem I have is don't sell contemporary music as just kind of nice, minimalistic film music. That music exists, but I would not describe it as an accurate representation of the current period. Most people think classical music is by dead composers. Yes, this is a common misconception. I know. Classical composers are alive today composing music. Yes, they are, and bear in mind this is classical in style, not classical in period. They're two different terms, same word. Many have the impression that it is really weird and inaccessible. Yes, this can be true, and I appreciate that the point of their video was to pick 5 composers that are very easily accessible. However, I don't agree with their choices. Yay to the fact they're all alive though. Great. Boo to the fact they're all men. And boo to the fact that they're all kind of pretty minimalistic film music. And also all like pretty strings and piano. Other instruments exist, people. Although I appreciate that they are violinists and that's kind of their main avenue. Again, I like them. This one just nibbles away at me a bit. So their choices, okay, Arvo Pärt, fine. David Lang as well, fine. But Nyman and Richter, ugh. I love the way they actually explained what happened in the Pärt, in the music. That was really, really good, and I think that's the kind of approach that we should have to the more inaccessible large pieces of music. Once you understand what the composer's doing, what they're trying to say and things, it all of a sudden becomes a lot more bearable to listen to. Otherwise, a lot of the time it does just sound like noise. Fractures is, as well, a cool piece. Highly recommend. They also said, people often discuss where the line is. Film music does sound like classical music and that's where it came from. For example, Korngold, that's kind of the evolution of film music, and now drawing the line is vague. Again, yeah, okay, but my problem is they are selling contemporary music as only relaxing and nice, filmy, minimalist music. And a lot of what they chose, in my opinion, did cross the film music threshold, like Yoshimatsu, really. You know, it's a simple chord sequence, and it's easy to digest. However, I find it hard to digest when I haven't eaten anything. Just joking. These works have a place, sure, but again, miscommunication of purpose here. These pieces aren't especially building on the music that came before, which is what the rest of classical music does, but many of the principles that contemporary music has been taken away in the music of Richter, Nyman, etc., and been replaced with something that is honestly just kind of like, it appeals to the masses, which is probably why they included these in the video. They're trying to appeal to masses as well, but it's a commercial thing. They're trying to sell music, they're trying to make money by making something pretty and nice that can potentially be used in a film, which gets you a lot of money, and it's not really an artistic statement of the current period that's building on the music that came before it. That is my issue. The reason why a lot of contemporary classical music is often viewed as inaccessible is because world wars, that's kind of just set the ball rolling into this really big kind of depressing abstraction, and now we find ourselves in this really difficult place, audibly. I mean, you go to an art museum and there's a lot of contemporary art there, and it's relatively popular actually, and the art world have been very successful, in my opinion. Could be better, of course, but they have been very successful in promoting living artists, showing modern work, and that's really, really good, but it's very obvious that this does not happen in contemporary music. and it's very hard to get your music programmed. It's very hard to hear a lot of modern works. They might be done once by the commissioning party, and then that will be it, unless it is something that ends up being popular and kind of snowballs. But that really does happen quite rarely, and I don't think that orchestras nowadays prioritise living composers. The proms are getting better, but again, just the countless and countless hours worth of Mozart, Beethoven, it's drowning. It's like it's suffocating for the composers who are alive and don't get a chance to show their music. We can blame Mendelssohn and the Bach revival for all this. Thanks, Felix. So building on the music that came out of World War II, which kind of sounds like this, and this, means it's not going to sound nice, really. The point of minimalism, really, which is the style that every single one of the two-set composers writes in, is to kind of find beauty in simplicity, because music only got more and more complicated. However, and the fact that it got more and more complicated is what led audiences to kind of listen to more jazz and pop instead, because it became too unbearable. It's not necessarily a pleasurable thing to listen to that kind of music. It's not necessarily going to be on your iPod, it might be on mine. And so you had this split, and then it became unpopular, and it's an artistic statement. It's a very difficult thing to penetrate if you're, you know, not within this bubble and you're not used to it. I'm rambling. I didn't like their choice of composers. Let's pick some better ones. I am actually going to start with a film composer. Hildur Gudnadottir is an Icelandic composer, cellist and singer, and she is an award-winning, very popular at the minute composer who wrote the soundtracks for Chernobyl and The Joker, and these are the two that we're kind of going to be talking about today. The difference between her work in film, what she produces, and Nyman's is striking. She's incredibly innovative with the sounds that she tries to create, and it's this reason why her score for The Joker has won her so many awards. The main themes are actually played by Gudnadottir on her halophone, so this is a kind of strange electric cello that she's made herself. To quote her about the instrument, she says, "It's a monster. It has 8 strings and every string has a microphone. There's a speaker on the back, so it creates this feedback loop and creates all these strange sounds and does that electroacoustically. For this score," she's talking about The Joker, "I played it through a 4-stack of amplifiers, so all the strange sounds you hear, like when he goes into the fridge, are all played on this and all played live. They're not made by a computer." So a lot of film music today is played by computers. It's just very, very convincing MIDI files, and then you might get a soloist in to put over the top, but that'll be about it. This is because they don't really want to throw a lot of money at the music nowadays. It's more kind of put towards the special effects and things like that, and often as well the actors, if they're really famous and very expensive. At the same time, she was also writing the soundtrack for Chernobyl, which is a TV series, but her approach to this one, as opposed to The Joker, is completely different. She's not a one-trick pony by any means. Gudnadottir actually visited the abandoned power plant where they filmed the series, and what she did was she recorded the dripping sounds within the building. So she wanted to she wanted the music to have the effect that radiation has. She wants to kind of bring that home, and it's like it's like looming thing, it's like dripping everywhere. So she literally sampled the sounds in the building, and then she put them into the computer and kind of edited them, put them all together to create the soundtrack. The only live bit that's actually kind of an instrument, if you like, is her voice, and that's it. So this is really different and a very unique approach. Far more exciting than a lot of the other things that are out there right now. So, composer number 2 on our list is György Ligeti. I hope I'm saying that right. It might be György. Sorry. He was a Hungarian composer. He is no longer alive, so kind of annoying, but he died in 2006, so recent enough that I'm still going to kind of include him in the video because this is very recently in the grand scheme of things. Arguably Ligeti's most famous work is a choral piece called Lux Aeterna. The reason why this is famous is quite a funny story. So the piece was used in the film 2001 Space Odyssey, and they didn't tell him that they were putting it in the film. So again, one of the ways that film music works, not all the time, but this is very common, is that when the actors are on set and things, the producers will have an idea of the kind of music that they want in the background, and a lot of the time, particularly in the early days, this was Wagner, Mahler, hence why John Williams scores are relatively similar. And they would play this in the background whilst the actors are kind of, you know, doing their thing, and that gets them in the zone and they kind of know what they want. They will then give this example piece to the composer and say, okay, can you rip this off, basically. So they did this with 2001 Space Odyssey. They used Ligeti's piece as the example music to get them in the zone, gave it to the composer to rip off, and then they weren't very happy with the job that he did. They figured, okay, well, we don't want to use that, I don't like it, it's kind of rubbish, so why don't we just use the Ligeti instead? That'll be fine. So they left it in the film, and you know, Ligeti was kind of going about his merry way, and then his friends started coming up to him and saying, oh, I didn't know your music was in that new film, oh, that's really cool, and he was like, what? So basically, Ligeti took them to court, he won a massive settlement. Nice one. Otherwise though, Ligeti wrote an abundance of music, and a lot of it has this kind of dark humour and really kind of fun character, which I think really makes him stand out amongst some of the others of his time. It's a slightly different take to the very heavy, depressing music that is prevalent in the 20th century. So some examples of his humorous pieces include The Devil's Staircase for piano, Clocks and Clouds for orchestra, and several movements of Musica Ricercata, which is a set of pieces again for piano. Ligeti was also a great pioneer in developing texture, which is an element of music that was not really given very much attention in the centuries before. It was all very harmony and melody heavy, and texture, whilst texture exists obviously, it was a lot of the time, well, it just wasn't developed as much as those other ones. Ligeti's piece Atmospheres, along with Lux Aeterna that we've already spoken about, focus far more on the overall sound of the orchestra or choir rather than a foreground, background, here is my tune kind of setup. This is very similar to the music that the Polish sonorist school wrote, which we spoke about in the Bacewicz video. If you want a bit of a reminder of that, go and watch it again. He was incredibly disciplined as a composer, and many of his works, such as Musica Ricercata, serve as a compositional exercise as well as a piece of art in its own right. So what he did with these pieces is that the first movement, or the first piece I should say, has one note, one pitch in it. You can play it to several different octaves. The second piece, 2 pitches. The third piece, 3 pitches, and so on until he's got all of them. It's an incredible challenge for a budding composer. Have a crack at it if you feel you can, or if you feel you want to.